Mike. Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1112 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. StickerU.com. Create custom stickers, labels, tattoos, and decals for your home and your business. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Electronic Products Recycling Association. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. And Canna Cabana. The lowest prices on cannabis guaranteed. Over 100 stores across the country. Learn more at cannacabana.com. Today, together in person, are Hugh Christopher Brown, Ron Hawkins, and Stephen Stanley. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Mike.
How's it going, Mike?
What is this, a crossover episode? So, Hugh Christopher Brown. By the way, I always called him Chris Brown, but I saw, you're calling him Hugh Christopher Brown. This is is that because of the other Chris Brown?
That's just an in-joke with us.
Yeah, it's kind of for that reason exactly, I think. It's a professional name, but he still answers to Chris. Oh.
Okay, he's here. So I was about to announce that,
here.
okay, so this is exciting. So I have Stephen and Ron here, and Chris was running a bit late. So he's joining us in progress, but that's right now. Everybody, Chris Brown is here. Okay, watch your head, Mr. Brown, because,
We weren't sure which Chris Brown we were going to get.
Okay. So Chris,
I changed my name to Ron Hawkins so you wouldn't confuse me with Ron Hawkins.
Any thoughts on the passing of Rompin' Ron Hawkins? What were your initial thoughts when you're
Zero thoughts.
Zero thoughts.
Did you guys have thoughts?
I had thoughts because I have friends that have a cottage on Stony Lake, and we boated past the compound a couple of years ago. And then I started looking into all the history in that building, and that Lennon had stayed there with him, and that he had...
And he ran up that phone bill.
Vladimir Lenin?
Vladimir Lenin. And then he had a real nice gallery in there that I would have liked to have seen. But I think part of the deal of the sale of it was that would be maintained, but I don't know. I'm speaking through my hat right now.
So, Chris, you just joined us, so I need to tell you now that these mics are unidirectional, and you got to be as close as you can. You do the short straw. That's why you don't have
Chris knows about mic technique.
So
thank you.
Say hello to everybody, Chris.
Hi. How's it going? Everybody can watch Heaven's Gate and watch Ronnie Hawkins' performance in that.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. You can spend 4 hours doing that.
Okay, Chris, you're gonna have to get a little bit
more close.
Even more close. Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
It's nice to see you in 3 dimensions. Last time I talked to you was in 2.
Well, hey, thank you, because right off the top, I'm gonna let people know where they can find your initial deep dives. Because Chris, we're meeting for the first time. We did a Zoom, but in May 2016. Ron Hawkins, not Rompin' Ronnie Hawkins, but Ron Hawkins from Lowest of the Low came over. That was episode 175. Mike chats with Lowest of the Low lead singer and songwriter Ron Hawkins about Shakespeare in My Butt, success for which you're unprepared. That's what I wrote. Gore Downey.
I'm getting used to it.
The Perfect Marriage of Peace and Quiet, and Tim Thompson's Maple Leafs Montage, and much, much more. So May 2016, that's when you made your debut. November 2017, this is episode 282. Mike and Stephen Stanley chat about his career in music as part of Lowest of the Low and the Stephen Stanley Band. And then we played and discussed your favorite songs of all time, Stephen. That was great. We kicked out the jams.
They've all changed since then, but that was good.
Come back and do it again. Chris, we met via Zoom in March 2022, and that was episode 1018. And I wrote, Mike is joined by musician Chris Brown as they talk about the Bourbon Tabernacle Choir being a duo with Kate Fenner, touring with the Bare Naked Ladies and the Tragically Hip, and what's happening on Wolf Island. So welcome to all 3 of you. This is awesome.
Thanks,
Mike.
Nice to be here. Sorry to be late.
That's okay. We started without you, but we barely got going here. So I don't even know where to begin, except how did you three end up, like, this sounds like a super group here. Like, this is some kind of, is this like the Traveling Wilburys? What's going on here? How are you three hooking up here?
We think of it more of as a supper group. We're probably going to have a lot of dinners when we're on the road. It was so. I mean, you know how Ron and I we were both in a band called Lowest
I
of
don't
Low.
know how you two
Let
met.
me tell you about that. We're in the 90s.
Actually, we were both in a band called Popular Front.
on Popular Front. That's right.
And
A
I met
magical
Steve.
time called the 80s. We were in a band called Popular
I
Front.
met Steve because Dave, the drummer in Lowest of Low, was also in a band called Social Insecurity with me in 1983 and 84. And then we broke up as a band, but Dave and I started working, and I think Dave said, I know this guy, or he knew a guy who knew a guy named Steve Stanley. And we met, and then it was like, we were kids, man. It was like, I remember meeting Steve and going, it was just sort of like, I get this guy. He's another crazy kid like me who just wants to make this music.
Wants to rock. And that whole transaction with Dave took place on the platform at the Young subway station where I met him. We'd met at a party and hadn't really talked, but then we ran into each other at the Young subway station, and through that conversation I was invited to come audition for the band. And on the same day I think we auditioned 4 keyboard players.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yep, none of which have survived.
What do you need a keyboard player for?
That's what I kept saying.
I was going to say, name those people.
None of whom survived, Chris. You might want a second.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like Spinal Tap and drummers. They kept exploding.
Well, okay, so before I find out how Mr. Brown came into the mix here, you two are founding members of Lowest. I'm talking to Steven and Ron right now, but founding members of Lowest of the Low. But of course, I don't know if it's 2012, but at some point, famously in Canadian rock circles, Steven, you left the band. And then I don't know anything except I have you guys on and I talk to you. But it felt like, oh, that's kind of sad that Steven Stanley's not in Lowest of the Low. But you two, I was just chatting with you in the driveway. Like, clearly, you two, Ron and Steven, you guys get along great. Like, so was there a period where it was frosty and then you warmed up to each other again? Or can you give us the inside here?
That's
Like,
just silly talk,
It was
Mike.
completely manufactured to sell records, and it just worked perfectly.
and it worked.
We tried it for 6 years and then decided this isn't working. We might as well get back together.
We've had 2 very frosty periods in our professional musician lives.
let's
over the
talk
years.
about that.
Well, how much do you want to know?
Everything. Like,
Even though I haven't really discussed the sort of ancient aliens aspect of it, but it's like, I think both were for 6 years, too.
6 years,
There's
exactly,
an
almost.
interesting numerology going on as well.
And what's the date today?
this is September 16,
16. So
2022.
my last show was 9 years ago on September 21st. I know that because of a little thing called Facebook that just gave me a memory the other day saying.
And I just passed the rehearsal space where we had our last rehearsal. Rehearsal
Right.
Factory was out here in Mimico.
Yeah, it's true.
So how did you kiss and make up? Just time heals all wounds, or what happened there?
With our lips.
Full lips. The first time was very much the responsibility of Elliot Lefko bringing us together in a room to discuss the idea of playing some shows. The second time was probably Ron, because I can just hold grudges forever. So, so Elliot Lefko and Ron.
Okay,
There's
shout
your two,
out. Yeah, Elliot Fko, big fan of the show. He actually gave it a 5-star review on Apple and said something about like, what a wonderful, great podcast. And then I had a exchange with him like, oh, why don't you come on? I'd love to chat with you, because his brother's been on, his brother Perry Lefko. And Elliot's like, no, thank you. So he's a big listener, not interested in guesting. So okay,
He would have stories though. Boy,
I know.
I think I could wrap up this Steve and I thing.
Yeah.
If I may be so bold, it's to say, like, there's a lot of strain doing. This isn't a natural thing to do. Being in a band with people isn't a completely unnatural thing to do, and it's not. It's the kind of commitment that you wouldn't have with anybody else in the world, including your own mom. Like just being in a van and being in times and places where you're tested. And on top of that, you're trying to do something that involves the deepest part of your own commitment and ego. So you find yourself in these places where you're sort of like pushing up against each other. When it's all firing in the same direction, it's absolute euphoria. But sometimes, often, as you know from every music doc you've ever seen, it starts to bump or rub. And usually that's because of things outside of the art. And then, Steve makes mistakes and no, and then then I make mistakes and Steve makes mistakes, and then we're fighting, and then there's a big distance. But I think each time it seems like suddenly we have some cold water in our face and go, this person is my brother, and I've been through things in my life with this person that I haven't been through with anybody else, and it's ludicrous, and maybe it's a mortality thing as we get closer to the sweet release of death. It seems more important to kind of make sure you honor the things that are, there's a Lowest to the Low documentary being made, and I caught myself saying in the moment, like, when you're in it, you don't take the time to honor people, like when you're in it.
Right.
And I say in the thing, like, when I was in it with Steve, I didn't take the time to go, wow, those are some sweet licks you're putting down on those songs that help make those songs, because when you're in it, you're a little bit in your own silo and you're kind of just working away.
We were really good at being just like day to day. We weren't thinking ahead at all, and day to day was almost every day, and that was a problem. And the funny thing about, I know we're going to move into talking about how Chris is involved in this, because Chris was having a parallel experience. I think maybe
if only he were here, he could.
If only we were here, but he was like, we were both our bands in the 90s were on the road doing like 200. Close to 260 shows, I think we did one year. Mm-hmm. So we didn't know each other well, but we knew each other for sure because we would cross paths whenever we were in the same town or had a day off. So everything that happened with Chris was based on me working with him after the fact. And we've now made 2 records together, one that's out and one that'll be out in the new year. So that's kind of been the reason the 3 of us have come together. And this whole thing happened for one reason only. Ron and I were talking at some point when we started talking again. We said we should do a show, and I said, well, we should do it on Wolf Island because Chris has a great thing going there. And he said, yeah, well, Chris should play too. And then that turned into us doing 8 dates together. And in the next,
I remember it as saying, like, I need a summer home, and Steve said, I want a big yacht. and we decided that this was the best way.
I thought it was all based on owl burgers.
Owl burgers.
There we got to
Palma pasta has a nice owl lasagna.
Okay, so I should tell you all right now, since you said Palma pasta, that all 3 of you are getting large lasagnas, frozen lasagnas. No joke. And Chris, I know you're a vegetarian.
Thank you.
Okay. And
it's widely known that you're a vegetarian.
I have a vegetarian lasagna for you, buddy. So you got a vegetarian lasagna. These 2 gentlemen, they get the meat. It's beef. It's not owl. We talked about. There's a lot of snowy isles on Wolf Island, and you're gonna have to get much closer to that mic. But
I will.
I know you drew the short straw because you were late, so they got the good seats. But Steven, I was looking at your like musical history. You have a thing for Chris's, like it's a bit of a fetish, I think, because you got Chris Bennett, you got Chris Rellinger, you got Chris Brown. Like there's a lot of Chris's around here.
Chris's, and then there's DJ Chris Powers on the island. Where we at one point we had 4. At one point we had 4 Chris's in the room when we were making Jimmy and the Moon. So, and Ron has a fetish for Steve's, like.
Mm-hmm. And they're all trouble.
And my brother's name is Steve, so shout out to my brother Steve. Typically, it's usually Mike's we're all buried in. But Chris, I got a nice note here from Jeff Merrick. In fact, as I read this beautiful note, I'm going to start a song. Okay, so just to warm us up to you, Jeff Merrick sent me a lovely note yesterday. He said, "Love the Bourbons. Saw them countless times. Brown is outstanding. Let's keep this simple. And Kate Fenner's voice is hauntingly beautiful. Simple is an all-time for me. Let's not compete." Wow, so that's a nice note from Jeff about the Bourbons. Endings beginning. Where is Kate, by the way?
I just left her in New York 2 days ago, but she's going to join us on this tour in Toronto for the Drake.
Shout out the dates, because I know what's going to happen. We're going to get talking. You guys are going to actually play, which is unbelievable. And then we're going to realize we rapped and didn't tell people that they can see this trio.
Thanks, Jeff, for that lovely note.
Shout out these locations and dates and be clear about which one Kate Fenner is going to be singing at. But where the heck can we see you 3?
I think I can do them all. Starts September 29th in Owen Sound at the Heartwood Music Hall. And then it moves to Peterborough at a place called Jethro's on the 30th. And then October 1st, we're at the Hotel Wolf Island, which is on Wolf Island. And then on the 2nd, we're at Motel Chelsea in Chelsea, Quebec.
Which is Wakefield, basically.
Which is Wakefield, yeah. And then there's a couple well-earned days off. And then we pick it up Wednesday the 5th. In Hamilton at the Mule Spinner. And the 6th, we're in Fergus at the Grand Theatre. 7th, in Buffalo at the Oxford Pennant Room, which is the new room attached to the
This is
town
all off the
ballroom.
top of your head. I'm impressed.
And this is if we don't break up after the first weekend.
Or after this conversation.
And then Toronto on the 8th at the Drake Underground.
And that one, Kate's at the Drake.
Yeah.
Okay, in the 8th.
Yeah,
of
we have a
October.
real nice group of people opening up, mostly different for every show, but there's a nice group of musicians that are going to be playing with us, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Amazing. This morning, just before you guys arrived here, I recorded with Mark Hebsher because we record Hebsy on Sports every Friday morning at 9 a.m. And I mentioned to Hebsy that you guys were all coming over, and he said, loved Chris and Kate when they joined the Tragically Hip on stage during their Music at Work tour in 2000.
Anybody talk about us?
Not so hot on those other two, but
I said, yeah, I literally was promoting, Ron Hawkins, Stephen Stanley from Low to Low, and then, and of course, Chris Brown from Bourbon Tabernacle Choir, and all the notes come in about, oh my God, Chris is going to be there. That's unbelievable. So welcome, Chris. Great to finally meet you and get you here in person.
It's nice to be in my hometown. I miss it. I'm here periodically because my mom's still here and I still come here and play and work, but it is really nice to be home in Toronto.
How's Wolf Island? Because I had my guest yesterday is a guy named Garrett Joyce who lives in Kingston. And part of our jokes, we were joking in the driveway before you got here about the snowy owls, because Garrett and his wife will take the ferry to Wolf Island and just to see snowy owls. Have you encountered many of these snowy owls on Wolf Island?
Oh yeah, ton.
Okay.
All the white birds come through in the winter. In fact, 4% of migrating species on the continent come through there because it's the world's biggest estuary.
Lots of birders there.
Yep. Well, yeah, lots of birds.
I said that in the driveway, and we thought I said burgers, and then we started talking about snowy owl burgers.
Okay,
And I
there
know
we
you're a
go.
vegetarian, and that's very offensive.
Yeah, we're all actually against.
I think even if I wasn't a vegetarian, it would be
yeah, for the record, we're all against turning owls into burgers.
We will not eat any owls.
It's pretty offensive now.
Yeah.
How you slice it.
Wolf
Okay,
Island is great. Thanks for asking. It's going to be fun to play the hotel, which we've really worked hard on the last year and a half to just it's just returning it to what it has been historically. It was built in 1860, and it's now very much a place for music and the arts. It's a farmer's market. It's a farm to table restaurant, and kind of civic water and art space. So it's good. It's going to be lovely to play there. Everybody's really anticipating the show.
Well, there is a note actually for Stephen and Ron that came in. So a couple of days ago, Dave Bedini was over here, and I mentioned you guys were dropping by, and he would like me to ask you two from Lowest of the Low to chat about. Do you remember the first time the Rio Statics and Lowest of the Low played together?
100%. That was at Edgefest,
Oh, Dave.
1993, and I mean it was all interesting because of you can tell your own story about the intake of alcohol over the course of that day if you want to, but the funny thing that I remember the most was, so we were co-headlining with the Rios. There was a dual stage setup where there were drum kits back to back, and we were going on second last and they were going on last, but we were both.
Is this Molson Park?
It's at the Ontario Place Forum, the spinning
Oh, the
stage.
spinning forum.
Yeah.
Right.
So we were both sent out to set up at the same time, so we were both ready to go. And at one point, our manager came over to me and said, "We've got a problem." And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Well, both the drummers are setting up on the wrong side." So Dave was setting up on the Rio side, and Dave Clark was setting up on the. Oh, there you go, more Daves. Two Daves was setting up on the Lowest to Low side.
These are the Daves I know.
Yeah. Anyways, it was a smashing set, literally, and
Yes, I remember the stage really spinning that
yeah,
night.
it was.
We got there at noon, I think, and
Yeah.
you would think we would know better,
No,
but we
wouldn't
were
have
playing
known
at
better.
9, so we hit the beer tent at noon. And there was a point where I was in my underwear heading for the stage, and our manager, Frank, said, "Ron, what the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "It's okay, Frank, I had a shower."
No, you and I had a big discussion about that because you were very passionate about the idea that it was time that we played without any clothing on, and I was
Well, it
like,
was
"No,
time.
we're not. This wasn't the time. We're not going to do that today."
That's like a Red Hot Chili Peppers move, I think. Yeah.
It wouldn't have been as curated. Let's just say that.
Oh, with the songs. I think what's the legend of the Garys?
I was wearing socks.
He was wearing socks.
When police played at the Horseshoe Tavern, apparently Sting ended up in his underwear. Is what I'm told.
Oh,
like
yeah.
the first time when there was like 9 people checking.
Sting ended up in my underwear that day too. No, the crazy thing about this though, Mike, is the thing that the cautionary tale about that story is not just don't be an idiot rock musician and drop all of your responsibilities that day. Which is, I apologized to Frank the next day because we had gotten in this big fight about merch because there was we sold our t-shirts for, I don't know, $15-20 at the time. And the festival was selling their t-shirts for $50 or something. And we were like, well, there's no way that's happening. And we were the second last band. So it was kind of, ballsy for us to get feisty about it, but we got really feisty about it. And Frank, God bless him, would always go to the mat for us. So he went to the mat and got everybody across the board to drop their prices of their t-shirts.
Wow.
So that happened. And then, we showed up and I specifically, everybody in the band to some degree, but I specifically, shat the bed because I drank from noon till 9. And it was an insane show and everything. And so I apologized to him after what he had done that I would show up and be in that state. But the problem was the next day in the papers, it was like rock and roll's back in Toronto and everybody, and you get that idea of like why Iggy has to cut himself across the chest every night or Art Bergman has to do what he has to do because you go, there's a real industry around promoting that. And it was like, Lois and Loeb has, all this other bands like Lois and Loeb's brought rock and roll back to Toronto. And it's like, well, no, they just acted incredibly dysfunctionally all day. And you're now rewarding that,
We were played enough that we managed to keep it together though. So
I was going to say, you probably just brought it because you guys had it in the saddle,
But Chris, there was a photo session. Somebody showed us one of those contact sheets that had a couple circled and I'm standing there holding a bouquet of flowers. And I'm like, the hell is that? And Dave goes, you don't remember that? And it was like we were playing some song. Somebody threw a bouquet of flowers on the stage, and I picked them up and apparently started going into like The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow. Started in the middle of a song.
Oh, wow.
Shut it all down, just start doing something
amazing.
else. And it's like, as much as that kind of weird dysfunction might be interesting to look at, it's not. I think it's kind of a dangerous thing to promote across the board.
I've chemically induced dysfunctional stage story if you want to hear it.
I do. I just need you just a titch closer to that microphone. I know you got the uncomfortable
All
seat,
right.
but yeah.
Well, after one of I'm trying to remember the tsunami, we were doing a benefit in New York at the Living Room, which I was asked to host, and all these different people were playing, and I was there all day setting up, interviewing people, and the benefit was for Phuket, which is spelled Phuket, right? Which is already like you've got to be careful on the mic. And then someone goes, "Hey man, are you hungry?" and gave me what looked like a power bar. And about 2 hours later, I hadn't left the club and I was on stage and Kate was there and I said, "I think I got to go to the hospital. Something's happening. Like I'm having an aneurysm." And then this guy's in the audience, he's looking at me, he's got both thumbs up. I'm like, oh my God. So I was sitting at the Hammond and we were bringing Nora Jones up and I couldn't remember which drawbars activated which manual, which keyboard. Like I actually had to push everything in and hold a note and then start pulling drawbars out until I got a sound. And then we played whatever we played. And then I turned to Nora and I said, "Did I already introduce you?" And she's like, "Yeah, twice."
Rock and roll, baby.
But it happened. And other times it's been voluntary. Like these guys, I've also been there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's like it's bound to happen when you're doing like that many shows a year. The Ontario Place thing was also, one of the probably the first big show we'd done, and there was a real friendly audience. So it was like there was a little bit of I think kind of jubilation and deer in the headlights at the same time that you probably didn't experience because you were
my headlights were out.
Three sheets to the wind. But yeah, I remember it being sort of feeling like an opportunity missed, but then the next morning, like Peter Howell's review especially was like Ron said, it was like the greatest rock show to ever happen. And it's like, oh man, no, it wasn't.
Well, we had the exact same experience in South by Southwest, which is we went down there, sent down there to do our jobs. And of course we got billeted with 2 college women and we just partied for 3 days and we did a crappy showcase show. And
that was one of the worst shows we ever did.
In fact, that one, I got off the plane and Texas. We got off the plane in Texas, and I reached in my wallet to pay for something, and there was this like shiny thing, and I looked in there, and I'm like, oh, that's 6 hits of acid in my wallet that I've brought across the border and off the plane.
Oh my God.
And so rather than be the kind of person like I got to get rid of this, it was like, we have to do this before we go back because I can't.
Obviously.
So that didn't help.
You can't waste it.
And I think that last day when I don't want this all to be just insane road stories, but I remember waking up, and usually I was not the person in the band that was the voice of reason, but I was like, don't we have to be on a plane in like 40 minutes? And so we just running around throwing stuff in bags and getting to the airport, and our sound man Brian, who was as bad as anybody, almost got arrested by the police.
Oh my God.
In the airport. He fell through the fake window of a restaurant into the restaurant.
Yeah. But had the greatest line in band history probably when the person at customs said to him, "What's your country of origin?" He said, "Window." He wanted a window seat.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
And of course, do you have anything to declare? Yeah, we're drunk. So
there was actually a police car with the lights flashing on the tarmac beside our plane because they said our manager negotiated to get him on the plane because he was in such a mess. And they said one false move and he's being arrested. So
wow.
And then like
made it
maybe it was like 2 years later, I was in an office, in a publishing office or something. I was sitting down beside this woman who was from the States, and I said, "Where are you from?" She said, "Texas." I said, "Oh, I'm not allowed to go back to Texas anymore." And she said, "Oh, I'm not really supposed to be in Canada." And I was like, "We should get married. we're like citizens of no country."
That's funny. Now, I'm going to read something to you because we're live on the Toronto Mike live stream, which is the pirate stream, I call it, which is live.torontomike.com. And there's somebody there named Fig Jam who left this comment. I'm going to read to you. Fig Jam.
That's the guy who gave you the power bar.
Thanks, Mike. This is so cool. Saw Lowest of the Low at U of T pub with the woman who would become my wife on April 2nd, 1993. Bleed a Little While is now the song that's locked in as the music we really connected to. We've now been married 24 years. And then he goes on to say it brings back like a visceral emotion in him when they hear that song.
You're welcome,
now.
Fig Jam. You're welcome.
So you could play, if you played a couple of chords. But he's very emotional on the live stream. And then I want to shout out Canada Kev, who's there, who says, "Damn, there was a pre-sale for the show at the Drake, and tickets were only $11.62 or something."
That was a big mistake that never should have happened.
Is that right?
That was just an error on the part of the Drake, and no, there were no tickets sold at $11.62.
We've had that person fired.
We're doing at least a $16 show, so the $11.62 would have been absurd.
Well, yeah, I know. He just bought a ticket for $32, which sounds like incredible value, regardless. Tell Chris that janitor buddy Darlene says hi.
Oh my God.
This is Canada Kev's wife. They used to go to see Bourbon Tabernacle Choir together, and they're still married as well. So a lot of like couples seem to be hooked up through your music, all of you.
Yeah, we were obviously doing work we didn't even know about.
Yeah.
Music for lovers.
My border story, just about crossing borders, was Kate and I driving my 86 Suburban across the border, going back to New York, and dealing with the customs officer, and Tony Sher waking up in the back seat and just yelling, "We're just making home tapes, officer." He said, "Excuse me, we're just making home tapes." None of us knew exactly what that meant, other than the fact that he woke up distressed at the fact that there was someone in uniform.
You're going to have to step out of the car, please.
Yeah.
Home tapes.
Like nowadays, like when you guys just drinking like Perrier now when you got your concerts? Like, is there any more partying anymore at this stage of your rock and roll lives?
Who wants to take that one? So I think you're still not drinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so
pointing at
Ron
me.
no longer drinks.
Ron no
It's
longer
important
drinks.
I know this because I have a lot of fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery in this basement here. So Ron, you're not drinking alcohol anymore.
Yeah.
I'm 22 days into a non-alcoholic.
You're not getting any either then.
Yeah, so
now
Oh,
Chris,
this is going to be fun.
Chris is
see, this is the
Chris
new
notorious
2022 rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
Chris, are you still alcohol friendly, or what's your status?
Well, I just didn't burn that tire.
Yeah,
you know?
he didn't.
Many of my friends are sober, and I'm grateful for it, actually, because it's meant we've been able to continue to create. Where, as we all have been expressing, there's been a time when that abandon in that kind of wilderness was really, really necessary, and then at a certain point it's not. And if people are too attached to it, it can become a very difficult thing to deal with.
Sure.
So, but I still enjoy imbibing.
Sure.
I think when I was a teenager, it was way more weed, acid, all that stuff.
Power bars.
The power bars. That occasionally, occasionally it's just interesting. It's interesting what's happened with psychedelics, in the last decade and more. And that a lot of the stuff that we were self-medicating and doing is seen to yes, have a really great effect. I mean, there's people in my family who are deeply involved in that, in terms of, treating a PTSD and whatnot. So
Absolutely. The psilocybin treatments, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that what Ron was talking about in terms of, let's say the unnaturalness or the extreme experience of being on the road, that it was natural. They naturally go hand in hand, as well as culturally, just because you're playing bars all the time. I mean, when the bourbon started, every single show, someone would bring a bottle of bourbon and we would drink it.
It's in your name, dude.
Yeah,
That's on
you were
you guys.
asking for it.
Well, yeah, of course we were, but we didn't think twice about it. You know.
Well, you're also, a part of it is that you're indestructible. I mean, the kinds of things that we did in 2 years or 3 years in Lowest to the Low would have killed us now.
Right.
Because it's just an unsustainable.
I'll go you one better. My when I tell the story about the first breakup, I always say to people, I really think somebody would have died if we hadn't have stopped.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
So,
well, in fact, people did die all around us.
All around us,
we
yeah.
lost friends, as I'm sure Chris did as well, because it's part of the, it's just part of the toxic nature of the industry, which is that you get, not everybody, but I would say, speaking for us as a band, I think we got into it with some very high-minded ideals about changing the world and about being artists and about staying true to our vision and stuff like that. Which we were, and the last thing we wanted to be was rock stars. We hated the idea of rock stars and everything it stood for. And then we found that, as we got, and we started off like a lot of bands do, cool sort of weirdo outsider fans and, just a very welcoming community. And then we got some songs on the radio and we started to get big, and then suddenly we didn't recognize the audience as much. And we were put on this kind of hamster wheel of repeated machinery. And so, if you have a bit of a wandering eye to any kind of substance abuse, it starts to pick up as a coping mechanism, because also the other thing nobody tells you about being a successful artist is how incredibly boring 70% of the day is, you're just killing time to do that beautiful thing you do for a couple hours at the night. So,
yeah. And once you start making other people money, it becomes a liability because people just want to keep the gag going. And I'd say that's not just about, substances, it's also about antisocial behavior. I mean, there's been lots of circumstances that I've been in that I've just walked from, or because it's being perpetuated because it's making someone bread, and at whatever social cost, and it could be substance, but it also could be people's social proclivities that just don't get checked. And
there's a psychic cost, and there's a
and
it's still probably to this day. I mean, as much as there's lip service to inclusion and widening of the doors, they have been widened, but I mean, it's still a bit of a boys club everywhere you go, and that's getting changed, which is great.
Yeah.
But talk about the 90s. I mean, it was a complete boys club in the 90s.
Right. Well, look at what's happening in the change is that people are losing permissions. And so now it's going to outright violence, bigotry, and denial. It's real, and it's all there because it's what do you mean I can't? What do you mean I'm not?
I always could.
Yeah, it was exactly.
Right. Stephen, you said 22 days sober?
22 days. Well, I mean, let me be clear. I'm not it wasn't like a dire situation. I just decided that it was time to take a break.
It's okay, man. You're in the trust tree. You can talk.
It's
I was going to congratulate you. I was going to congratulate you.
There's nobody listening.
I appreciate it. It's more like a pause that when the pandemic started, I took a pause and didn't drink for about 9 months, and I suspect this one, we'll see what happens with the tour, because sometimes when you play after a show, having a beer is a nice thing.
Right.
It's
all about moderation.
Yeah,
right?
I'm a pretty casual drinker now as it stands. So, I mean, Chris is exemplary because, as I said, I've made a lot of music with him in the last 5 years, and in the studio, there's always a sort of the idea of, we're making music. Let's be drunk while we're doing this. He's always like, no, I'm not touching it until we finish the day, and that's always been sort of a bit
He's
of
the
a
responsible
yardstick for me.
adult.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the position. Like if I'm producing and engineering, I need that.
Yeah.
Other people, it can be very helpful if you know.
Sure.
And then when the time comes, I mean, just the
You need to know how many drawbars you've pulled
exactly
or not.
Okay, quick question. Do you guys smoke weed?
Yes.
It's legal now, you know.
You know, I'm much less of a smoker than I am a drinker of weed now, which has become a very sort of nice replacement for alcohol.
Right.
Yeah, I never have been because I was I don't know what it was. Like I think when I was of the age that people start to experiment with smoking and then smoking weed, I was a goaltender on a fairly serious level. So I just sort of sidestepped all that stuff at the age that you normally would get into it. And then
We refused to use words like singer, so we called him the goalie.
the goalie, last line of defense.
A lot of Canadian musicians are goaltenders.
That's actually true.
Yeah, and then when Dave
Ron
and I,
McLean was pointing that out. He was like naming them all, and it's an unbelievably high percentage.
yeah,
I had a very bad leg break playing in a charity game in 1997, the year my first daughter was born. And the goalie for my team in that game was Gord Downey.
Yeah,
and
see,
so
that's exactly right.
We had every time I met him in subsequent years, we had that and only that to talk about. That I had broken my leg in the worst possible way while he was in net.
It's the whole musicians playing hockey thing has come up a lot lately. I went to the woodshed and talked to Jim Cuddy, and then there were stories about Cuddy and Bedini going at it in these hockey games.
been there.
Yeah.
So, do you guys participate in any of those like Canadian rock hockey games?
Well, you have too, but I've played with Dave. I'm much less of a hockey player now than I was like even 5 years ago. But I've played with Dave since pretty much right after that gig at Ontario Place. We sort of became friends then and have played hockey ever since. But yeah, I won't. There's been some run-ins with Jim Cuddy and Dave for sure over the years. I'm not playing in those games anymore. But
Right.
It's fun. It's funny when before I made that record, Music at Work with the Hip, Downey was in New York and he said, "Are you playing much hockey here?" And I said I can't because it's music. Like it's really everything to just kind of make it work in the city. And about I don't know, a month after that, I got off stage. I was playing at the Garden with the Bare Naked Ladies, and they come off stage, and this guy goes, "Hey, man, you're a really good organ player," and it's Wayne Gretzky. And I was like, "Thanks, you're really good at what you do." And we start talking, and I'm like, "Yeah, my dad coached me, all the way up, grew up in Ontario." And he's like, "Well, why don't you come skate with the team?" And I was like, "What team?" He goes, the Rangers. He goes, why don't you dress for practice this week? He goes, no, wait a second. We're doing a charity game for Christopher Reeve. So it was the Rangers and their alumni plus Kiefer Sutherland, Tim Robbins, and myself.
Wow.
playing a benefit for Superman.
Yeah, doing a benefit for Superman. And then and I scored on Richter. And that got me, so then for 3 years.
Did he let you score? Because I can't imagine you scoring a legitimate goal against Mike Richter.
It was Andy Richter from
Yeah, exactly. You'd have
I was
to
going to
ask
make a
him.
Richter scale joke, so we got all the lines.
Oh, I like
covered.
that Andy Richter.
But it led to 3 years of flying around with the Rangers and doing charity games.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was really crazy, and like with it was amazing with Roger Gilbert. Like sometimes he would come out and it's like royalty. People, and it was so amazing. Like for instance, with Gilbert trading stories about their lives were so similar to ours as musicians. Like when he was coming up, the teams were exactly like bands. They spent their life on the road. They weren't getting paid. And it was amazing to really compare notes that way. But it was
That's funny that you say that, Chris, because when people would say, well, why did you quit? And I was like, quit to become a punk rock guy. And I was like, I didn't want to travel around in a band with a bunch of guys, or in a van with a bunch of guys. And it's like,
yes, you did.
but yes, I did.
Yeah.
It's like what Bob in Phil Esposito's biography, he talks about the after practice before a game that they would all go to the bar and just drink all afternoon until game time. Like in the 70s. Like it was a very, that's not happening now, I would imagine, but very different. I did get to line up, Mike. I did get to play in a Rockers Play the Classics game, and I got to start and lined up against Paul Henderson. That's
was that at varsity?
Wow.
Was it varsity?
Yeah.
Were you playing that game?
Yeah, I played in that game.
Yeah, we didn't know each other well then, but I figured you were there. Yeah.
My only celebrity hockey stuff is that I was taught by Johnny Bauer. So
that's a mind blow.
It's pretty cool.
Are you kidding me? Okay, so I want to shout out just quickly here some partners that help make this happen. Like the fact I still can't believe it. I got Chris Brown, I got Ron Hawkins, I got Stephen Stanley, all in my basement. Like who'd have thunk it? And I want to thank the following in no particular order. If you want to get your cannabis, whether you drink it or smoke it or eat it, you go to Canna Cabana, cannacabana.com, over 100 locations across the country, okay? They won't be undersold on cannabis or cannabis accessories. So much love to Canna Cabana. Much love. I know a couple of my friends here are not currently drinking, but if you can drink in moderation like Mr. Brown here, Great Lakes Brewery is delicious fresh craft beer brewed right here in Southern Etobicoke, and you can find them in LCBOs across this fine province. I got to get you a sticker, Chris. You've never been here, so I got to get you a Toronto Mike sticker. This is from stickeru.com. That's where you go to get your decals and stickers, and much love to the good people at stickeru.com. And, of course, Ridley Funeral Home. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. They've been pillars of this community since 1921, and I look forward to Brad Jones dropping by on next Wednesday when we're going to record another episode of Life's Undertaking, which is his fine podcast.
See what he did there.
Shout out. What did I do there? I don't even know anymore. But much love to the good people at Ridley Funeral Home. Hey, I want to ask you, Mr. Stanley, a question here, which is I saw, again, back to Bedini really quickly here, but Bedini and you were both at the plaque unveiling for Dave Bookman.
For Dave, yeah.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about that ceremony? I know you played there as well, but that we have finally at the Horseshoe Tavern, there's a dedication to Bookie.
It's so nice, and it's now permanent in front of the Horseshoe. And I like, I went down, I guess about a week and a half ago, and was out front for a while, and just watching as people would sort of walk by and stop and read it, and the people seem to understand what those are. And I was kind of just marveling at, because I think of a lot of people, if you know who Dave is, it means a lot to you. And I think a lot of people, maybe if you weren't into the type of music that Dave liked, they wouldn't know who he was. But awesome that it's there. For me, he was like a best friend, and still miss him every day. I'm sure Mr. Bedini said the same thing. And it just all happened way too fast and way too soon. And a really lovely community has grown around it. Dave was very compartmental with all of his friends, and we are now all kind of a gang supporting each other to try to keep his name alive, which doesn't seem to be too much trouble. I think one of the things that he probably didn't realize in his own life was just how far-reaching his effect was, and just the weeks and months after he passed, just being able to read over and over again people's love for him was astounding, and it really hasn't let up. And I know the people that knew him best, it still feels like it happened yesterday. So
there's a beautiful song on Stephen's new record about Dave called "The Owl," it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, I mean, I know he was a huge advocate for Lowest to the Low, and Chris Bookie, was he going to bat for the Bourbons?
Oh yeah, I mean, I knew him going back years and years. I mean, to our earliest club days, to days on the air at CFNY. He was just a fixture of Toronto music. I mean, also just because there was a number, the Bourbons was our band, but then, I was playing and recording with a lot of different folks. I mean, of course, he was around for the Rios, like making whale music and a lot of other projects that I was involved in. So yeah, I mean, I was very much entwined with him. And then later, working more recently in these last few years with Stephen too, our orbits kind of came around again.
Amazing. So yeah, check out that plaque dedicated to Bookie. It's outside the Horseshoe Tavern there on what's that, Queen and Spadina there. So awesome. I think I saw you, Stephen, at the Grilled Cheese Challenge.
Grilled Cheese Challenge,
right?
yeah. We played it that for the second time, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a fun gig, and it was a great day. All I'll
It's
say
too
is
far for me to travel for.
it's like, that's at least 100 steps there, and you're a cyclist. So it's probably actually
That's
too.
right.
It's too close, I would think.
It is actually. I do get upset when I get like my wife has me pick things up, and it's like I get excited when she's like, "Oh, it's in East York or whatever." It's like, "Okay, good, nice
Yeah.
juicy ride." And then it's like, "Oh yeah, it's there, whatever," and Lakeshore, and I'm like, "Oh."
I mean, this, not to get critical, but they do need to find a way to speed up the production of grilled cheese. A friend of mine. What are you going to say?
I'm going to tell you the fun fact, which is, do you know who won the grilled cheese challenge this year?
No, I don't.
Ridley Funeral Home.
Really?
Wow.
And
It's a mind blow moment. That's a true story.
How do grilled cheese and funeral homes go together? That's like
I asked this
age-old
question, and the apparently the production was with the Franklin Horner, the people at Franklin Horner, which is another local outfit charity, and then. But Ridley Funeral Home sponsors it, I guess, and they won.
So we did an hour set, and it was a lot of fun. As I said, a friend of mine went to get in line for a grilled cheese 10 minutes before we started, and got his grilled cheese half an hour after we finished.
I'll talk to the organizers. They also have Great Lakes beer at the grilled cheese challenge.
Did you get
All
Taylor
my
grilled
friends, I
cheese,
should
or-
be there. I should have a booth.
I mean, is that, Mike? Is that not true of every kind of festival that happens in Toronto? This summer, Chris played it, but I was just there watching at Skelton Park in Kingston, and I just sort of thought, this is beautiful because it's an amazing festival, and it just seems like it hasn't sort of blown the banks and outgrowing itself. And things in Toronto tend to kind of blow past how many people it can accommodate, and then all of a sudden it's just too big and you can't get to the stuff. But Skelton Park, I don't know if you feel the same, Chris, but I just thought that's kind of the way
It was amazing.
it should be. Yeah.
Sorry, the ferry, I just was dealing with there's a band that played the hotel last night, and they're stranded because the ferry is down.
Oh,
and you only have the one ferry, right?
And currently we're waiting. So I was just,
You have to
and
swim.
Esmerine was supposed to play. Some of the folks from Esmerine came down with COVID, so they canceled. So I was just like, why don't you guys stay at the hotel and play another night? But yeah, Skeleton, I mean, I have to say it's been very interesting being in that neck of the woods in the Kingston, Wolf Island area. And it is a very fertile musical place. Like one of the first things I did in that area was start working with this bluegrass family, the Abrams brothers, and I realized how much of the music in that area was influenced by the environs of the Ottawa Valley and all the pickers that surround it. It's got a huge rock and roll culture, Kingston, but it's fed by that. It's very similar to Nashville in size and in that effect.
Amazing.
There are some cool younger bands coming out of there right
Amazing.
now. Such great stuff.
Incredible.
Well, before you, Chris, because you were a little bit late, so I was chatting up Stephen and Ron.
I know you don't have to rub it in. I'm sorry. There was a crash.
mentioned
on the
it 7
427.
times now.
Okay. Okay. Can we move on now?
Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. Okay, so but we were chatting. Like I know it's. I'm not editing that out. So. But I did have this fantasy where my family goes on a road trip to Kingston or whatever, and then I get on this ferry. Hopefully they fix it for me, and then I somehow set up my studio in your hotel, Chris. And I don't know, I record musicians that are there. I have this vision. I feel like we need to make this happen at some point.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have much to set up because it's all set up for high def broadcast as it is. So you could actually just come and do that. You could show up in your underwear as
That's the
as
plan.
You
been
could show up in my
explained.
underwear.
Yeah, show up in Ron's underwear. No, yeah, of course you can do that. And in fact, under COVID, the couple of things we had to do was basically build a restaurant outside and then make it so that broadcast was available. And we ended up doing a lot of
Amazing.
broadcasting under COVID from there. So yeah, come on.
Ron, when I go see you three in concert, I'm trying to envision, are you playing lowest of the low songs, and are you playing Bourbon Tabernacle Choir songs? What exactly could we
Yes.
expect when you three are in concert?
We're playing everything ever written by us. Yeah, we're playing
Any Dan Hill?
We're playing a daunting. When Steve, when we first kind of came together with this idea, I think I had a certain vision of what it would be, and then Steve said, "Here's 80 songs we should play," and so now we have literally something for anybody who's ever liked. If you like a part of our career, but you're like, yeah, that other stuff, I don't want to hear that, you're gonna be happy because
80
there's
songs.
stuff. No, there's probably more than that, but there's
With me, it's all garbage. So it's just
yeah, and if you don't like us at all, you can still come. But so we're just playing stuff from all of our records, and we all have a lot of records, so it's quite a swatch, and we're all going to be on. One thing that we're not sure that we made clear when we first blasted out about this was that we'll all be on the stage at the same time for the whole thing. So we're going to
You know
jump
what I'm
around
thinking
and
about
play.
now? Like the Canadian
The Ridley Funeral Home. Probably.
Yeah, Ridley Funeral Home, but the Canadian Highwaymen, no, the Trans Canada Highwaymen. I'm trying to think of what name they go by, but it's
It won't be like that.
it won't be like that, okay? Because you got a guy from Sloan, and you got Moberg is there, and you got
Stephen Page.
Stephen Page is there, and the odds guy,
Craig Northey.
Craig Northey, right? And I think it's Chris Murphy from, by the way, just shout him out from Sloan. But like, yeah, and then they just play each other's songs like together. But is it similar to that, or
No,
is it
different?
Different, okay.
I mean,
It's going to be better than that.
it's going to be better.
But we are playing all their songs.
You're just gonna play Pursuit of Happiness songs.
We're only doing the
And Chris and Steve will be
Highwaymen songs.
super drunk, and I'll be super sober. So it's going to be completely different than theirs.
Exactly. It's going to be different. Well, I mean, but it's natural. I mean, we all spend our lives, doing this stuff, and as was mentioned before, when the Bourbons and Lowest the Low were touring and touring and touring, it's like we weren't spending time together but we were all doing the same circuit, and culturally we've been through what we've all been through, so it really makes sense. There's also a kind of vernacular that I didn't realize until I got to New York and really spent many years making music in New York, where it's like, oh, if you're Canadian and you play music, you travel. That's not necessarily the case. Like New York's kind of a crucible where all these, great players, it's like traveling without going anywhere. But, a lot of the musicians that Kate and I started making records with who were playing jazz, then started forming bands and touring with us. And culturally, it was funny because you don't never recognize your own accent, but people would be like, oh, right, they'd associate you with Ron Sexsmith or anything else, and you would go, oh, right. So I think that even probably all those bands you just mentioned in the Highwaymen all were so disparate and probably didn't listen to each other's music back in the day, but they completely would have had similar experiences, and at this point it makes ultimate sense,
Well, something that happens too, that, I mean, it doesn't apply to the three of us, but I was laughing when I saw the Hall & Oates Tears for Fears tour, and I was like, what? Like their fan bases would never have gone to see each other's shows back in the day.
Right.
But it's sort of
right.
like through the misty fogs of time. You're like,
nostalgia gets kind of bleeds
it's
together.
sort of like we'll watch Stranger Things and then we'll go and we'll see these guys play together. Like, so I think it takes a little bit of I'm still like an adolescent in terms of like, I still feel very tribal about music, and I'm still super judgmental, and I shouldn't be, but I am. And like, I was in a coffee shop in my neighborhood, which is kind of like unfortunately has become like a massive like hipster ground zero, and there's this little coffee shop, and I go in there and they were playing Blondie, and I was like, oh cool, like all these young kids, like 22-year-olds playing Blondie. And then there was like Blue Oyster Cult or something, and I was like, no, you can't do that. What are you doing? Like, but it's like, when you're not an old person, it's like, well, they have access to everything, and they just go, is it good? Is it bad?
We had access to KTEL records, which
That's
had
true.
everything on
Goofy
it.
Greats and
I talk about it. Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I'm a titch younger than you three, but not a lot younger, but I would be listening to 680 CFTR, which was all hits.
Totally.
And you would totally hear, like, I don't know, Funky Cold Medina next to, like, Def Leppard, Pour Some Sugar on Me, next to, like, some ballad or whatever. Like, it really, it wasn't genre-fied or whatever. Like, they just...
Oh, wow, I never
lumped
had
all-
that experience, though.
Yeah.
Well, I
You
always
didn't have
found
that
it, like,
experience.
for instance, I found it wild when doing stuff in Brooklyn and being on a hip-hop record and people going, oh, man, I love Rush. Like, you're from Canada, and it's like you realize it's your prejudice and your own associations or your disassociations.
The silos.
Like it's not, it's how
really
it's
a thing.
whatever how people find it.
So, because I have two members here from, but let me ask the big question here. Like, is Stephen Stanley ever going to be a part of Lowest of the Low again?
Probably not.
In his heart
In my heart.
or on the stage?
He'll be like a special guest who will show up occasionally but you're not going to be, you're never going to be touring as a member of Lowest of the Low again.
So we've been talking about the last 5 years and what I've done since I left Lowest to Low. I really, in my mind, believe none of that happens if I'm in the band. Right. And there was great years for sure, and there's a lot of, this experience, and the funny thing about, I'm having a blast the last couple of weeks learning these 80 songs that Ron's talking about. A collection of those songs are probably 20 of them are lowest of low songs, and our plan is to kind of mix it up. There are people coming to multiples of these shows, so we're not doing 80 songs a night. We're gonna be probably doing an ordinary kind of what are we guessing at, like close to 2 hours probably what we'll probably do. So that's not 80 songs. Playing these songs again, the amazing thing that I'm finding is even if I'm kind of like, I'm not really sure how that one went, I'm not really sure what I did, and then like 2 times through,
your arms go,
muscle memory just does it. It just plays the parts that I play, and that's kind of cool.
But Stephen,
the interesting thing about that, if I can say something
of
about
course,
that,
of
Mike,
course,
is that it goes back to this sort of thing, like when you're in it, you don't recognize everything, and it's like I think after the first time, or maybe it was even more recently than this, but I said to Steve, like, why do you think that you sort of, when you left the band, suddenly there was this wealth of songs he was writing, a lot more songs, and I produced a record for Too Many Sisters, and we had a great time doing that record, and it was like, man, these songs are killer, and there's a lot of them, and Steve had said to me, well, I don't know, when I was in the band, I knew that you were going to write a whole bunch of songs, and it was sort of like, because I find things like that happen, which were never mandated. Like you were saying, like, I know it wouldn't happen if I was in the lowest of the low. And it's like, we never mandated that or anything. It just sort of seemed to be a thing. It's
a thing, but I think, you to this day are as prolific as they come. And, I think once the band was established that, there was a main singer, there wasn't going to be an album where it was half our songs and half my songs, half your songs.
But I remember at one point saying to you, like, there was a time when Steve had written a bunch of songs and I had a few, but I had just done a solo record or something and I had a few. And I said, well, why don't we make a record that's, more Steve songs than my songs? And you were sort of ticklish about that. And I thought, like, of any band in the world, that's something that we would do, is go, well, we don't really, not we don't really care what you want, but it's sort of like, this is what we want to do, or, but some stuff like that just, there's things you can't really put a finger on, like things just happen. And
it's like, I think all of the above is correct. I think anything was a possibility. I do think for me, the path that ended up, ending up making records with Chris has just been exactly where I wanted to be. As far as there's not that, obviously Lowest Low can leave town and make records too, but the idea of going to Wolf Island and that it's an immersive experience where I'm there for 4 or 5 days at a time, and we're just kind of, you get up in the morning and you have a tea, and then you talk for a while, and then you start recording. And it just felt so right to me to do it that way. And
so you're happy. Why would you change things if you're happy?
Yeah, but we're making our next record at Wolf Island, and we're going to be there 6 or 7 days a week. So,
there is a hotel now which is set up to make records,
but no ferry to get there.
So. Well, no, that's just temporary. That's temporary. The world's biggest electric ferry actually is sitting there in Picton, waiting to come to the dock once it's finished. So,
really,
yeah.
That's
also, the other thing about your song, Steve, is like, I just saw Steve play the Bookman show, the celebration after the plaque thing, and the band is killer. Like, I had not seen the band live before. I heard the records and stuff like that, but I saw the band and I was blown away. It's an incredible band, and Steve's at the top of his game, and like, it just to have the space to do that, right? Whereas you and I always traded off that stuff, and we're great together as frontmen, but like, it's great to see you doing that in the middle, standing in the middle of the stage.
It's strange and weird to say this, but the pandemic did so much to change my mind about, and you talked about mortality before. All those things are kind of playing into the idea of, I am now completely wired to just love every moment I'm on stage. Wow. Whereas before, I don't know if, we don't, like, obviously in the Lowest Low days, we were loving it, and there was a lot of tension sometimes. It was always a good show. That was the good thing about the band, but there was tension, there was the strife of, like, when we were always on the road, always traveling. Now it's just like, I don't take anything for granted, and I think that doing you were more prolific than I was, but doing like a whole series of live streams over the course of the pandemic really kind of changed my view of playing live, which is weird because, like, that was just to a computer screen. So, but yeah.
One might say you're not a glass half empty kind of guy.
I'm not a glass half empty. I'm not a half ass.
Can I jump in? One thing on this is that, having been in a band that started when we were 15 and stayed together for 10 years, and then having joined, innumerable other projects, either producing or being on the road with them. The tricky thing is that our identities, which develop when we were really young, and when they're developed in front of an audience and on stage with one another, it becomes very threatening, right? Like those that thing leaving can be, I mean, and it's existentially profound, and the way through is to constantly let it go. And sometimes that means staying together. Sometimes it means just allowing other manifestations to occur. And then as I'm sitting between these two awesome people, realizing like, well, guess what? They get to enjoy all of that because that's been accepted. Whereas I've been in situations before with bands where it's like, oh yeah, well, they're like whispering to me outside of the control room about, and you're like, how about you guys communicate? Because that's what I think we're trying to do. But it's totally understandable because, again, harkening back to what Ron said, it's a very intense and somewhat unnatural environment to be in.
Right.
And but I mean, you come up against this in music or through it in music where you have to kind of totally dissolve the identity all the time. You know, and if I say that if you look at our seniors and people who've been doing it for decades, I toured with B.B. King, and you know, you talk to Neil Young or Willie Nelson, they do this, and it looks from the outside like a straight path, but that arc is actually this incredible comings and goings and things that didn't work, and
Right.
Yeah, and it's like I would say too, like towards what you're saying is that anybody who's on stage, and I heard Tom Waits say this, that you kind of have to create a character for yourself because it's not exactly who you are. And no matter how true you are to yourself and the art you're making, you know, there's a performative aspect to it, which is not natural.
Yes,
so
it's giving.
So you create something that is you. And then like, I remember when the band broke up, like we all had different responses. And I went to Europe for a while and because part of it is like when it's finished is you go, okay, well, who am I? Like, because I had this trajectory and it was a trajectory that ate up 24 hours of a day, you know, and it's like, now you're not that person. So who are you, you know? And it seems weird to say that because of course you're the same person, but I think it's this element of like, you were a quarter of a whole thing too, right? Like you were part of a gang, you know?
I don't know, but are you the same person when you come out of something like that? I think you're a different person. I mean, like it's such a radical. I mean, that first breakup especially was such a radical change. It was like we went from being in a van almost every day to the bang, and it was over, and we were no longer in the van every day.
Well, and we were still kind of kids, and we kind of laid a big turd on Dave, which was that Steve and I kind of not together because we were not really getting along, but we kind of at the same time decided it was done, and we kind of laid that on Dave, and that was not fair because, as Dave said, he had thrown his eggs in our basket, and we were all on this thing, and then suddenly we're like, no, you're not in this thing anymore, and it's like he had to build a whole other life, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's that's another. There's lots of and then of course there's your friends and your family. There's all kinds of collateral damage around it too. Like it's not.
But as it is with like, I mean, the stakes right now, as we were talking about with needing to challenge at our deepest level, like what we've been doing collectively, whether it's as men or as a planet or as a nation and stuff. And that's always, those questions are always inherent in being able to move through stuff. And so the nice thing about the crucible of music is that it's a great place to try and fail. It's no less threatening than any other thing, but you can actually come out of that, as we all have, and with fruits from the experience that you bring forth as songs or whatever. So, I mean, to me, that exact stuff you guys are talking about is something that you can see people, all of us, struggling with right now, post-COVID, in all of the crazy things that are kind of coming up right now, and we really need to face, And I more and more art and music, just it makes sense. It makes sense. And
that's why we're calling this tour the Try and Fail Tour. So.
Fail and fail.
Fail and fail.
Fail and fail.
Okay, so firstly,
fail.
all that's fast from my perspective, outsider here. Fascinating to listen to because, I mean, you said the word prolific, Stephen, with regards to Ron. And I mean, we think Ron Hawkins, we think there's Lowest of the Low, but then there's Rusty Nails and Do Good Assassins, and then there's all the solo work like Peace and Quiet and all that stuff. Like just there's a lot of different avenues, whereas it sounds like, Stephen, you needed to step away from the band in order for you to flex those muscles. It's almost like maybe if I'm reading between the lines, and you can tell me, like, Mike, you're way out of line here, way out of line. But like the band morphed into a bit more of like Ron Hawkins' band. Meanwhile, you're Stephen Stanley. And to find your voice, you needed to actually leave that because there wasn't enough oxygen for you.
Yeah, that would be I think that's maybe a too easy way to explain it. There was a lot of things going on that both times that ended up with me, the second time with me leaving. But in the simplest way, I guess, it wasn't so much that I didn't feel it was a band. I still, I don't know how the band is now, but I think when I was there, it still felt like the band that we'd started for the most part. It changed a bit. I think the only thing that I think was a mistake was actually uttering the words "break up," because if you just walk away and take a break, which a lot of bands do, there's a stigma that goes with the words "break up," and coming back was hard. It's funny because listening to Sordid Fiction, which is the album we made when we came back for the first time in a long time, learning some of these songs again. I'm really proud of that record. It's like there's some really cool stuff happening on there that I think never saw the light of day. The only person I know, my best friend's son, thinks it's a great record. So I always sort of.
What is it?
He's the only person who thinks it's great.
Well, as an exercise, because as an exercise, I like to sometimes put things into YouTube and then sort by view count, like just to see. And it's funny when you do it for lowest of the low, how overwhelmingly Shakespeare My Butt the results are. Like, I think the first non-Shakespeare reference is, I think you finally get to like a Black Monday at some point, but just interesting how heavy it is in view count for that one release.
Well, I think we've talked about this before, Mike, on this show, which is that the other thing about being in a band is that if you have a situation like Shakespeare My Butt, because not only did we did that record, was it successful, but we were also underdogs because we had tried hard to get, signed by everybody, like everybody did, and were flouted at every turn, and then in spite of ourselves made it happen.
Right.
So there's a great underdog story and everything, and then everybody who was involved in that, there's a massive romance to that you can never reconstruct. And it's like, I always joke about, we just made that record Agitpop, and I'm like, I'll say, Agitpop is the best lowest low record. Or I'll say it's the bookend to Shakespeare in My Butt, even to the point that I think subconsciously we chose like sort of Manila and Burgundy. Like, we didn't do that on purpose, but it's kind of like
Agitpop are fantastic. I'll just tell you.
But it can't. But it's one of those things where you put it out there, and it doesn't matter how good it is. It can't not. I can't take people in a time machine back to when they didn't have kids and they were drinking
100%.
every night at university and stuff. So there's a whole other set of clothes that you just don't have access to make magic with. So the thing itself is one thing, and then the world around it is another thing that.
Yeah, I think there's a humility to it too, that realizing the blessing of having something that's popular. Like, again, talking about our elders, this goes back about 15 years, but Willie Nelson told me he makes more money off Crazy every year than he does from touring.
Right.
Why does he tour? Because he loves it. Touring. How many gold records did Neil Young have? Until, I think, recently, Harvest.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's like, that's really educational, right? And here we are going, oh, well, and again, I'll harken to another world that, when Kate and I were on the road with B.B. King, and we'd be opening with him and then playing with him, and we'd be like changing up the set list every night. And it's like, guess what BB does? He plays the same set every night, but it is brand new because he's full of so much gratitude. And when you hear about like how he got to be on that stage, he's not messing with it, right? So there is the constant renewal of writing and everything, and then there's some stuff that is just going to be like a beacon that you're never going to outshine, and you shouldn't bother competing with yourself.
Yeah, Well, also, I think what we get to do, Stephen and I, with Shakespeare in My Butt, is that I don't think it's lost on either of us that we're blessed to have ever had that happen, and. It's like on top of it, it's like what we get out of it too is that what we lack in maybe units shifted. Like my partner Jill used to work at Tironi, and she said like once a week she would overhear somebody talking about music, and she said, "Oh, hey, my guy's in a band," and they'd say, "Oh, who is it?" "Oh, Ron Hawkins, still." And they go, "Oh my God, respect." And she's like, "Oh, you like," and they're like, "Oh, I've never heard the music," but it's like the story has gone out, and it's sort of like we get respect and stuff like that, and it's like so the joke side of that is like, well, that and $8 can buy me a coffee in my neighborhood. But but really, I know that that's the career we always wanted to have anyway.
I know some people in the business that have done really well that weren't musicians.
And God bless them.
It's like, I think the reality is we're probably not sitting here without that record, just because, we would have had middling careers.
And you wouldn't have
Mike
a
wouldn't
song
care
from
about
that album closing all 1,112 episodes of Toronto Mike.
Well, there's a good chance we would have been delivering Palma Pasta to Mike's show.
What do you want to play?
So, again, let's get to that now. I realize in the clock here.
Okay,
So
now 80 songs. We're going to play 80 songs.
80 songs, please. Do a medley of 80 songs. So I did see a tweet from you, Stephen Stanley, and you said you guys were threatening you might play live, and I didn't have such hopes and expectations because, I don't want to be disappointed if you didn't do it, but you are willing to do it. Now, you guys, so what is that? So, Chris, what is that? This is like a keyboard,
Chris
right?
is taking out the garbage.
That's a keyboard I bought on 59th Street when I was 14 years old. And I've written so much on this thing, and it ends up on records and stuff. And it's a beautiful old Casio. And
It's a Casio Tone MT11, everyone, if you're following along.
And Stephen was like, bring that little keyboard. So I just actually threw it in the car this morning at 6:30 in the morning.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to shut up because no one wants to hear from me. But you guys tell me whatever. You can do whatever you want, man. I'm just honored that you'd be willing to play live here.
Why don't we do, how about St. Brendan's Way?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, no, or Rosie and Gray. Rosie and Gray?
Even him with the Shakespeare in my butt.
Well, if you do Rosie and Gray, then I am going to play Rosie and Gray.
Yeah, we don't want to play that.
Okay, we could do Dark Horse.
Okay.
Hopefully I have it in the right key. I think it's
Oh, here we go. This is what you're going to get, people, when you come to the show. Yeah?
Let's try it.
Wait, what do you got there?
Well, this is
Hold on.
this is a terrible experiment, because if it goes terribly, the tour is just blown.
Is it in?
I got it in A.
Okay, people, we're almost there. Okay.
Yeah.
1, 2, buckle my shoe. Well, I don't believe in things if they believe in me. Well, I'm through with sympathy. Erasing, displacing. You know that shit don't work. Why don't you face it? Dark horse, always a strange days away. Well, I soar like a satellite, and then I crash and burn. Well, your sisterly concern misspent. I'm absent. Would someone tell me where the hell the time went? Dark horse, only strength away. Shadow falling, the phase I thought mislaid, a punchline that misfired. Always the first to hear the sirens calling. I've never been so wired, I've never been so tired. wicked thirst. When I put my devils first, it's cute. You live through the lies I only told you when my lips I closed. Always a strange days away. Only a strange days away. The fall of the strange days.
Amazing, honestly. Wow. Okay. Amazing.
Now look that up on YouTube right now. See how many views we got.
Thank you so much for doing that. Now, Stephen, since you seem to have this so perfectly right the first time, you're going to do it all again. Just remind me from the top of your head, when can we see you three?
Sure. So the three of us will be September 29th at the Heartwood Music Hall in Owen Sound, 30th in Peterborough at Jethro's, October 1st at the Hotel Wolf Island on Wolf Island, and October 2nd in Chelsea, Quebec at the Motel Chelsea, which is close to Wakefield. Then on October 5th, Hamilton at the Mule Spinner, October 6th at the Fergus Grand Theatre in Fergus, October 7th in Buffalo, New York at the Town Ballroom, the front room, which is called the Pennant, the
Oxford
Pennant Room, and then October 8th at the Drake Underground in Toronto.
And that's when Kate Fenner joins you guys at the Drake on the 8th, you said, right? October 8th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, amazing.
And Kate's got a brand new record, too, that's about to come out.
Just beautiful.
I want Kate Fenner on Toronto Mic'd. I'm putting that out there. I know I should talk to Kate. That's probably a good suggestion. I think I'll do that. I got to get her on Toronto Mic'd. But guys, honestly, what a pleasure. Any final words from you three before I play some jam from Shakespeare My Butt?
Ridley Funeral Home?
Yes, that's my
Shout out to Ridley
choice.
Funeral Home.
If you have to go to a
a
funeral
lot of
home.
coverage in this episode. It's like
They get full
sponsoring this
value.
tour, actually.
They get, you know what? They would do that. Any final words from you three?
Thank you, Mike, for being such a stalwart supporter of music and for making what we do just possible. Like it's a completely reciprocal relationship, and it's just really great to be here.
Well, I love you guys, and Chris, it's good. Like I said, first time in the flesh that I got to meet you, and I can't wait to take a photo with you by the tree after this recording.
I don't show up on film.
That's what I heard.
We can try.
We can try. And Steven, I saw you at the grilled cheese chat. I love it when I bump into you. I saw you in Pete Fowler's backyard.
that was a fun.
Blair
evening.
Packham played TMLXX. I met him there too. Wild how it all comes together.
Yeah, exactly. He's a great guy. My final word is I'm really looking forward to these dates. As of the last couple of weeks and working on the songs, I can't wait to play with both these guys for an extended period of time. So that's all I have to say.
Amazing. And Ron, now that you're the only living Ron Hawkins in Canada.
I've seen to that.
Well, now that Ronnie's passed.
There's got to
Okay, the only famous
Some pretty
Ron
obscure
Hawkins.
names put together.
Great to see you again. I think this is maybe your fifth or sixth visit, and I absolutely love it. So, and thank you for the music. Thank all three of you for the music. Just
Thanks, Mike.
love it. Thanks so much. And who's playing on this jam? Anybody in this room playing on this song? Love it. And that brings us to the end of our 1112th show. I should fade down the jam. You guys take over.
Do it.
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. Stephen Stanley is at, I hope I get this right, is it Stanley Music on Twitter? Yes.
Oh yeah. S Stanley Music.
S Stanley Music. Follow him on Twitter. Ron's not on Twitter, but Lowest of the Lower on Twitter. Shout out to my good friend Lawrence Nichols. Chris, are you on Twitter?
Just go to Wolf Island Records. Just type that in and you'll see all you need to know.
And remember, Wolf Island has an E at the end of Wolf. Go check them out. Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery are at Great Lakes Beer. Palma Pasta's at Palma Pasta. Sticker U's at Sticker U. Electronic Products Recycling Association are at EPRA_Canada. Ridley Funeral Home, they're at Ridley FH. And Canna Cabana are at Canna Cabana _. See you later today when my guest is John Biner.
Ridley Funeral Home. When you gotta go,
You gotta go.
Ridley Funeral Home. They'll take you home when you gotta go.
This is their first official rehearsal.
When you gotta go, you gotta go. Ridley Funeral Home. Welcome